Monday, October 17, 2016 to order. I'd ask you please stand and join in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. If you have a cell phone or some electronic device, if you please turn it off because it does interfere with our broadcast this evening. And I would ask our city clerk, Mr. Withers, to read the notice for the special meeting.
Yes, October 11th, 2016, to members of the Municipal Council from Frank Cook, Council President. Councilors, by authority of Article 2, Section 2-7C of the Attleboro Home Rule Charter, I hereby call a special meeting of the Municipal Council as follows. Date, October 17th, 2016, time 7 p.m., place, council chambers. The purpose is for the purpose of an informational presentation on the tax recap process and any other matters, legal matters that may come before the council.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned last week, and I gave out the notice and explained before the meeting, we're heading into one of the major event probably that we do every fall, which is the tax recap. So this evening, I've been working with Stan and for a few weeks to try to schedule a time when Stan NACEWICZ, our city assessor, and Deb Gould, our city auditor, could come down and give us some an overview of the process that we will be running into. As I mentioned last week, there are some time pressures that we're under for this. So tonight is an informational workshop for the council, and if you have any questions or whatever, for Stan and Deb regarding this is the time there is some information they'll be handing out later. But again, I just want to thank you for coming in and welcome you, and whenever you're ready.
Like usual, I got a bunch of paperwork that we'll go through them. There's 3 packets. I'll pass it around the horn.
Those are the same ones from last week?
Yeah, they're the same ones.
Thank you.
Okay, you know what? We'll go the other way first.
I'll get it over, Frank.
Okay.
So you want to throw one in Julie's drawer? Oh, and here she is.
Is it actually the same one? Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Can
Gould.
you take this one?
It's for you.
Can you this? No, it's really important.
Thank you.
Okay. If I didn't need my glasses.
Stan and Deb, for the members that aren't here, if I could just, Stan and Deb, for those of you, for the members who aren't here, I just want to make sure I have a copy so we can get it in their mailbox also.
Did
Okay.
we not have enough?
I'm not sure.
I put a set in Richard's drawer.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so he's all set.
Okay, but if you need more copies, I can definitely.
I'll probably need 2 more over here
read.
for in part. Okay, I have some extra.
All right, what we're going to start with first is what I'd like to show you. We'll start with this packet that says at the top, residential, commercial, industrial. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go into, this one, just briefly show you the last 3 years. And then, of course, we'll end with what's called the what if. All right, so starting on the first page, what I have here in front of you is just a comparison between what's going on between 2016 and 2017. And at the same time, I showed you on the very top what the total residential base was in 2016. Then it shows you what the total commercial base was and what the industrial base was. What you can see there, the industrial base has not really increased much. It's increased $4,696,400, or basically 2.1% increase. Commercial did basically about the same, 2.91% increase. The one that you really need to pay close attention to, what's going on in the city of Attleboro, it's all residential growth. Residential growth was $276,880,156 in value, assessed value, or 8.4% increase in the overall base from 16 to 17. Now, one of the things that I brought up and said last year, and we talked about it, but not a lot of time was spent on it, and we went into the whole times of the essence, so you took a vote. But one thing that I was trying to impress on is that we always show a presentation, most communities show a presentation for ease on the average value. You take all the houses, divide it by the number, and you come up with an average. Well, the average does not really reflect on what your taxpayers are paying or the base is. And what you'll see there is, like in 2016, what I showed you is the median was 230,000. That's the basic, and that's what this chart over here is. Later we're going to look at it in detail between 3 years. But the average relates to $260,000 for the average home versus the median. It's a $30,000 difference, and we always look at what is the increase going to be. Well, really, to the median where the bulk of our taxes are, the median is what you should really look at. 2017, the median went up by $10,000, and the average went up by $20,000. So if we were looking at it on a strictly tax basis, you're going to say that increase is too phenomenal for the residents to, and we're just not going to do anything. But if you're looking at the median, you're looking at the 240, and then you're going to see the other exciting part about what's dragging up this whole median is the type of homes that we're putting in the city of Attleboro. Now, off on the side, also below, another important factor which we never talk about a lot, but there's a lot of condos in the city of Attleboro, quite a few condos. I just showed you the average there of the condos. It's 150 versus in 2016. In 2017, it's 165. Number of units, total units. So what you see there between the single-family homes and the condos, we added 72 new homes in this city of Attleboro in 2017. The average or the minimum home price of those 72 that have been going in is about $400,000. All right? That's why your value is being pulled up like you wouldn't believe. Now, again, we're going to look at this chart in great detail, and it's going to give you some surprises. I'm showing you inside of the chart why. In this one here, I couldn't spread it out far enough because of this high end of the tail end that's coming in on the spread. So now we'll turn to the second page. I'm sorry, I'm going to flip back quickly. I just avoided the state class codes, but I gave you a listing so you know what the codes are going forward for single family condos, as well as I showed you the difference in each class on its increase. Again, I'd like to relate to you somebody that's picking up a lot of the burden in multifamilies. If you look at the 2 and 3 family multifamilies, I said last year, and it's continuing this year, to this year, the multifamilies are now, last year was 7.2% increase, this year it's 7.7% increase, all right? And then if you even look at when they talk about the apartment complexes, last year we didn't see much take place, but now it's a 12% increase because the rentals, it's income-based, the rentals have gone through the roof prices in the city of Attleboro. So you're getting money where it might have been $900 in the city of Attleboro, it's now around $1,200 to rent an apartment.
Can I just ask a
Yes.
question?
Councilor Porreka?
Thank you very much. So, a multifamily is 4 units plus?
Yes. Yes.
You all set? Okay, okay, continue.
What were you
Can I
gonna say?
ask questions?
Yes,
Yeah, she's allowed.
Yes.
Only a few from Deb, though.
So I was confused by what you said about the multifamilies. So the price, the value of the multifamily, how, you said it's income-based.
Great.
The value of the property is income-based?
The value of multifamilies of 4 units and above, and actually we look at 3 families and above, we get their income statements, and we place the values on residential property. That's the only one that we use the income on multifamilies.
Okay.
We get their income and we place their value based on their income, not based on sales, because if you stop and think about it, multifamilies are big apartments.
Yeah,
Won't
don't
stop
sell.
and think about it. They're not selling, right?
not
So you
selling.
got to do it a way that
Okay.
you got a number of sales, you don't have sales, so you got to have a different way of looking at them. Same as commercial,
Okay.
okay?
Thank you.
There's not a lot of commercial sales, and so you do all commercial. There's two methods of evaluation. In multifamilies, commercial, and industrial, it's cost approach and income approach. When you're looking at residential and you're doing it, it's cost approach and it's sales approach. All right, that's the way we do our assessment, and it's called mass appraisal. We look at that and we have to do all the statistics.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
Any
Any
other?
any other questions at the moment? Okay.
I mean, stop me at any time. I'm just gonna go ahead.
I'll
Go ahead.
It's okay, for
Okay.
another time, it's fine.
All right.
Oh, wait, I haven't
Later
formed
on.
it all in my head
Okay.
yet, so I'll send you an email.
All right. What I am doing now is I'm showing you, as you know, 99% of my data is already submitted to the state. So what I'm showing you tonight, it's pretty much where it's going to be when we come down and do the classification hearing and so forth. But what also I'm giving you tonight, I'm not leading you in any direction. I'm just giving you all the facts and all the data so that you can formulate some questions the next time we come down, or you can make your decisions way in advance or call anytime during the, if you have any questions. We won't be rushed.
But I would ask if anybody's any questions and you forward them to Stan, make sure you copy Ken so that he can send them out to everybody, so that we're all on the same page. Okay, thank you, Stan.
Okay, what I'm showing you too, and I showed you on the first page, but the second page is what's called the LA4, the recap of all the statistics. And this is all, again, this is all the units in the houses and how they describe in the 101s, 102s, total value. I've kind of summarized that on the first page. The third page, again, is for FY16, what the values were, but you can quickly see, if you look at these pages later on, you'll see where I came up with the statistics, with the number of homes, what it went in each class. The other thing to take a close look at too is if you look at the 130s, and which I didn't mention, 130s, 132s are vacant lands. What is happening here is we are consuming our stock of vacant lands. There were a lot of house lots sitting on the market, so they're pumping them out now. And in FY16, there was 1,141, and there's subdivisions that went in this year. Now there's 1,115. So they're using our inventory. There's not a lot. I haven't seen a lot of new subdivision plans come forward. Most of what was being built right now came forward in 2015, 2014, going through the permitting process. So I bring your attention to that. But that's a sizable stock of available house lots to go through. And I'm sure there'll be other subdivisions to come. But that tells you that you're going to see a continuation of the residential growth. And that's what it's been in the last 3 years. Now, as we turn the page into here, I just threw in here so you could see it, the tax rates. We're going to talk about the tax rates in the very end of the program. What I'm showing you here, the present residential rate is $14.82. The present commercial rate is $21.42. All right. Got it?
Slow down.
Okay, what page you
I
want?
want to go fast.
On page 5.
Page 4? Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's on the same.
This one right here.
Got it, okay.
All right.
Yep.
Stan, that's per thousand.
That's per thousand, right. And that's the only thing, it's all the others, is all the rates over the years. You want to look at simply what's over on the right-hand side. Pay attention to that when I get to the very last form and you're making some thought process of what you're going to decide to do. Now, this is where we come into the colored photograph. I just stuck this one in here in case you lose this one, but
Okay.
look at the color photograph now. We'll jump to this. All right?
This one here? You didn't get that one?
That's like,
I'll share with you.
You didn't get it?
Hold on.
Here.
I got some more, I got some more.
Oh, he's,
Do you have them also? I thought you had them, I grabbed them for the others one here.
You
Sorry.
can have mine if they want, I can get
No, no,
one.
that's it.
Is there one more for Richard?
No, we'll give it to them later, just for now, I want to see if they have one.
Okay, what we have here is 3 years of homes. Over on the axis to the left-hand side is the value of homes. The value, so it starts at, I started at 100 and it adds at 450. I'm going to show you a different chart for the 2017 because 2017, most of the sales are above the 450, so I wanted to put this on a comparison. But if you look at the color charts, which was insisted that I do it in color because of Deb, which is, she's right, it's easier to see. But from a point of view, what you'll see is the median down on the homes, they're way down in the 220, 230. But what you clearly can see is the red, which is 2017, and the spikes in the price of the homes that are going in on those areas. And what's at the very bottom, don't be deceived when you see 170, 160, 150. You know what those are? Those are partially built homes. Those are not homes that are lived in right now. Those are foundations, land value, and because land value right now is running about, on a brand new home starting at 145, but running all the way up to,
What does this represent?
oh, at the very bottom, the small letters is the quantity in each class of the bar. That's what Deb's at the very
So
bottom.
this is values, these are number of homes.
Along the bottom.
That's the number of homes, right?
Okay, sorry,
Got it?
thank you.
All right, but look at the red, the lower end, you would see that everything on this, on the 2000, is up in the high end of the range. But I will, again, bring your attention to the fact that the majority of homes that are sitting there are down in the 230 range. The median is 230. So when you're making your decision on what you're going to do, bear that in mind. Don't look at the average. Do whatever you want to do, I should say, but when you're making a decision and looking at this data and digesting it, keep that in mind. All right? So we'll go back to the, we'll skip by that because I showed you this in color. But this is the FY 2017 because it's the only one on there, it's in black and white. And even this, I couldn't put enough of bars to go what they're selling for, but you can see where the values are in the far end of the tails. I stopped on the other one at 450, but you can see right after 450 how many homes are still sitting up there. You got, after 450 at the bottom scale, you've got 42 homes, 39, 34, 23, 519. These are all new homes going in. And many of them are partial, still sitting at the low end. So there's probably right now about 40 homes in some state or the other getting ready to come out for a supplemental bill. Go ahead.
Just to clarify, so does that mean they're not part of the 72 houses?
They are
That's an
not part-
additional, that would be part of the supplemental after the tax rate is set, but before the fiscal year closes in May, you'd send out the
That's
supplementals?
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. And just to give you an idea, what we pushed this year in supplemental that was in the budget is we had a supplemental appropriation this past year from 16, I believe it was $92,000. That was a supplemental tax bill, which goes to the general fund, but then shows up in the levy later on. So that's showing you that there's still a lot of work in progress or homes in progress in the bottom. All right? That is this chart. Now, we'll go into the what if. All right?
Okay.
This is the what if. All right, it's very small, I know. This is the what if. Has everybody got one?
Do we
You
have
know-
one?
Here,
Okay.
I got it.
We can share this one.
Got another one?
Yeah, this part coming here is the thing we is very critical to what we always are looking at, by the way, so.
Good.
We good?
Do you need more copies?
We're good. We'll get it after. Thank you.
Okay, we're sharing now.
Sure, that's fine.
All right.
Yep.
All right, what I'm showing you here is what is basically almost all done. What we submitted to the state, nothing is certified, but this is taking the LA4, all the data that we have existing. You can see again, it's the residential class, it's the commercial class. All those numbers that I showed you earlier are put in this chart. Going down on it, it tells you that if it was a single tax rate with the basis of what's existent, it would be 1558. If it was, right now we're at one, so that you know, we're at 1.335 is the split that we're at. So 33.5% more on commercial, industrial, and personal property than on the residential. So if you want to take this other chart where I showed you the tax rate, bear in mind when we're looking at this chart.
The first package.
First package. It has all the statistical rates. This packet. Everybody's got it? All right?
Yep.
Good. Right now, 1482. If you look at 1482, now that would be relative to 1.22 in that area, all right? Of course, you're not going to go to that area. You wouldn't, because as the value goes up, the tax rate goes down, all right? So the only thing you will focus in on, what would be a balanced rate? In other words, looking at the median, what would you subscribe to give the residents pretty much a 2.5% increase, if you want to say that. But bear in mind that the growth is sitting in residential. The growth is in residential. That's all our growth. If you look, remember those other numbers, 8.8% of the new values that are in here are due to residential. 2.2% that's in here is due to commercial industrial. I showed you the numbers in the, putting a high tax rate on $4 million in commercial is not going to generate you a lot of growth. It's not going to pay a lot of your bills. And I know you're all interested in the maximizing the basis of what we have here in the city of Attleboro right now. It's residential. So
I want to make sure I get the big picture right. So no matter what, we're going to tax the same amount, which will be the 2.5% levy on top of last year. But maybe what you're saying is that due to the increase in residential values being possibly more than 2.5%, we could increase the levy by 2.5% while decreasing residential tax rates or keeping them about the same. Am I understanding that?
no.
No.
No, but similar. If you think of the median taxpayer and take that, grab hold of that, then the answer is yes. If you think of the average, the answer is no. Because the average, they know nothing, all right? You know what I mean? From the point of view, they know no tax at all at the moment. So the basis of growth that they have is where you're going to put the first increase. You follow me?
So that puts us in a good position this year.
Put you in a very good position this year.
Okay.
But it's also put you in the position to, if you go down, you maximize your dollars. Let me say it to you this way. I said it to some other people. 5 years ago, we came off the commercial rate. We were coming off the commercial rate. Smart move. Very smart move, because 5 years ago, there was really no commercial industrial coming in, but there's a lot of residential. So when it happens, you come off the commercial rate, You shift the tax rate to the residential, so this dollar amount, the residential is going up and the commercial is coming down. What do you really care if you're dropping the commercial rate? Because the ultimate goal is the levy capacity and getting more tax dollars in. You see what I'm saying? So if you put this rate up a little bit, and this is 82% of your growth or your business, let's call it a business, you're raising this a little bit, a little drop over here and a little raise, take the 82% of a slight increase over here over time, you far exceed what you got a commercial base. You can tax to the max on commercial and you're not gonna get the kind of growth money that you're gonna get in putting it over on the residents. And I hate to say it this way, you're out to support the schools. So you wanna bring in more money, especially when you have agreements that the mayor says that you're gonna get 50% of the growth. If that's true, I don't know if that's true, but I think that statement was made.
New growth.
New growth. So you want to shift it over to the residential in a small fashion, and you're in a driver's seat right now to do it.
So here's where I think I might be misunderstanding. I thought that we could only tax last year's levy plus 2.5%.
Oh no, no. Only the budget can go up 2.5%. Only the budget. The city's budget is fixed in 2.5% of last year. And I did put a levy page in here, did I not?
But wait, so what do we
It's not
do if
filled
we,
out.
I didn't fill it out completely, but it shows the levy increase.
so Stan, if we bring in more than that, then, so the budget's constrained to 2.5% increase? No.
I think the difficulty is that it's 2.5% is the increase over the previous year's levy. The distribution of that pool of money shifts throughout the tax base regardless of who it is that's paying. And I think what I'm trying to understand, and Stan and I had a conversation about this today because I'm like, I don't understand parts of what he does, to be perfectly frank. So, and he said to me, what happens is if you're not, tell me if I get this right, if you're not increasing, if you're not coming off the shift to commercial and all of your growth is being realized in the residential bucket, you're not capitalizing on that growth because your shift is still higher on the commercial side and all of your activity and future activity and growth is, the values are going up in the residential side, but you're leaving that on the table because we're not a single tax rate community. So the more that we're in commercial, the higher the percentages in commercial, you're increasing your values because you have new residential growth that has come on board, but you're not maximizing the potential that you could get. And that exponentially grows over time because your growth becomes part of your next year's base,
Right.
which then 2.5% comes on top of the total in the next year and in all subsequent years. So oftentimes people, friends and family that own houses say to me, my tax bill went up more than 2.5%. There's not, but their value changed as well. So the tax rate is as a percentage of the big pie, and the pie is constrained by two things, value and shift.
Right.
Okay.
Did it
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So conceivably, your tax bill could increase more than 2.5%, even if you maintained the same percentage shift. But that's because something else might have come off, your values might have changed, and they might have come off the commercial. If you lost something in the commercial side, there is going to be more on the residential, no matter what.
That's micro, but if we look macro as like the city as a whole, we have a dictated number to us, which is the most we can tax, and we're just deciding how to disperse that
outside of the growth number.
outside of the growth.
Growth number every year, 2.5% is on your base that's already been in there. In other words, 2.5%, the levy capacity last year was 65 million dollars, all right?
So wait, I think I
in your
understand.
packet.
It's in the packet,
It's 2.5% on top of last year, plus new growth.
Exactly.
plus new growth.
Got it.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what I'm saying to you is, when you have 60, as in the case of here, you've got $230 million of increase in value, of which about $100 million of that is due to new construction, new homes in the residential factor. So, and then on the other end, in the commercial industrial, you got a total growth of 4 million and 11 million, but
5 and 12, call it.
5 and 12, but
Call it 17 million.
that's value increase, as I showed you, that's a 2% takeaway. 2% of that, that's telling you that you only had about $5 million total between those two classes in new growth. So hit $5 million with just say 20, what do you got? You got nothing. You got 60, 100, you got $100,000 in growth if it was $20. Hit that other number with a 50-cent increase, and you got $100 million with times 50 cents. What do you got? You got more money. So that's what you, over year after year after year, a subtle increase or shift off that levy split to a sizable base in times like this will grow your growth capacity. And why I'm going back to relating to when we started this shift back a number of years ago, I calculated out very quickly what that shift from the 1.5 because of this residential growth. We did it in a time when the residential was down, 2008, values were down, we shifted over to the residential. Everybody said taboo. We actually grew the total money supply in our levy capacity by that shift by about $400,000. Our levy capacity grew by about $400,000 with shifting from 1.5 to 1.33 because of this subtle movement down, because there's no commercial industrial. You can tax all you want up there, but if you got no growth coming in and you're staying there to protect this, you're hurting the city as a whole.
So a small increase on $100 million is a lot more than a large increase on $5 million.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. And a lot of people think, from the homeowner, think of it as, wow. And that's why I also say this is an ideal time to do it, because I hate to say it this way, but if you do an increase on those large homes that are $450,000, $500,000, they know no other tax right now. This is their first exposure to it. First tax bill. That's the basis of where they're going to be looking at it. And if most of your residents, I've told you earlier, are in the median area, they're going to see an increase, but it's not going to be substantial relative to what's going on right now, because the high end of the base is that growth value, okay? So with that in mind, we go back to this chart, this spreadsheet. So it would show you 1.33 is actually, it's the first line on the second page. 1.3, I didn't put 1.335 because I did it every 1% just very quickly. But essentially, if we were to go to that 1.33 again, it would be that over to the far hand side, the right hand side, 1447 would be the tax rate for a residential. Do you see those numbers? Mm-hmm. And it'd be 2072 would be the tax rate for, right, and that's these numbers, okay?
You drop that much?
Yeah. That's what, if you stayed the same, you would drop that much. And what I'm saying to you is that a lot of what this drop is due to the new homes that are coming in. When you got 72 and 40, and they're all over 400,000, and the median home is sitting down at 230, basically look at it as the people that have been here around for a long period of time are seeing on the average a $10,000 value increase times whatever tax rate you choose, so that it works out to about $150. If you do that math very quickly through there, all right? That's what I'm saying.
Median, you said?
I'm doing it on the median, right? The median went from 230 to, what did I show you on the first? 240, so that's $10,000. Just take that $10,000, multiply it by whatever tax rate you pick. That's the increase, all right? That's the increase. Now, what I'm suggesting, I'm not suggesting. I said I wouldn't do that tonight, and I'll let you go with.
So Stan, before I recognize Peter, so right now, based on what you're saying, a current rate for residential, for example, is 1482, and a commercial is 2142 currently.
Yep,
So, and right now, we went with a 1.335 split last year.
right.
So again, although you didn't break it out to the 1.335, at 1.33, we would be seeing a decrease in both the residential and the commercial rate. However, due to the change in the median, that doesn't mean that your tax bill would go down. It would actually increase, although you're paying less money.
Right.
Right, okay. That's just something I want to make sure everybody understands. Sorry, on. Councilor Blair.
What happens to an older home stand that says 20 years old, and they're in the upper class now through increases over the years? Are they gonna see?
It's sales driven. It's sales driven. It may be 20 years old, but other 20-year-old homes are sold, so it's based on the sales analysis.
You know, what I hear is, geez, I bought my house 20 years ago, you know, I was paying
Oh, yeah.
$3,000, $3,500 for my taxes, which 20 years ago was stiff, and now I'm up to 9. You know, it's not gonna.
It's not gonna change those because it's sales driven. All right, if they're beyond the median and they're up there, they're going up like everybody else is going
Yeah,
up.
that's
Yeah.
proportionate. In other words, if a house that was a medium at 240 goes up 140 bucks.
You know, the other thing is, again, this year, we look, especially this year, it's because it's a certification year, we look at the class of homes. Actually, a colonial is not going up as much as a ranch. A ranch if a large size ranch is going up at a higher value than a colonial. Harrison, who has a ranch.
We're all sitting here going, this is my
Sorry, Kate.
kind of house.
But it's going, believe it or not, it's known as the starter home, but I'll tell you, there's some phenomenal starter home ranches that sprawl all over the place. But it's the style too. It's sales analysis goes on the style of the home. So the ranches, there's a lot of ranch sales this past year. There's a lot of sales too, if you bear in mind. We had to deal with 942 sales in our sales analysis. We do a form called the LA3, and we have to justify every sale that's on there, disqualify them, do all kinds of stuff. And you got to know the foreclosures, but 943 of those had to be analyzed and determined what was going on to get these values that you see in front of you tonight. But
What I'm saying is, somebody asked me, you know, their tax, if the medium home goes, you said it's like $140, $150, it'll go up at that rate. Then that house that's valued at 600 would go up 2.5 times the 140,
well,
like
what'd you say,
360.
2.5% of that would go on that house, yeah. In other words, that house would probably get an additional, instead of the 150, would probably get a $400 increase.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That
Yeah, it's proportional in
it's
that.
proportional.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions at the moment? Okay. Yeah, I guess we're good at the moment, so,
That's all I have for you tonight.
okay.
With that said,
Question?
I have more questions. Sorry.
Yeah, and then Deb's gonna make a presentation shortly too, right? Here's some additional information.
Yeah, I'm going to kind
Right.
of go over the process of the
Right.
tax rate and
Okay.
what is involved in setting that.
Right.
And so I actually take from Stan's stuff and move on, so.
Any more questions on Stan's stuff at the moment? Vice President Denley?
So I know you're not making a recommendation, but it seems like from the numbers, you might be implying that it would be prudent to continue to narrow the split in the tax rate by some amount that we determine, but just the directionality.
You determined that by osmosis, I didn't say.
But through osmosis, that's the right
That-
direction.
That would
you
be
think
the
we should be
direction
going.
I would say,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I gave you a prefix that when you did it, we added $400,000 to the levy capacity by doing that. You know, and the time's gone by, we skipped 2 years in between there. You stayed fast. You're gonna have other basis of opinions, but yeah, that would be my idea, that
Okay, I guess maybe to
Yeah.
President Cook, what might be helpful is because Stan's doing his job, not just giving us facts, not recommendations. But
Right.
I would appreciate maybe a financial advisor saying if you narrowed it by this much, this might occur, and if you narrowed it by more than that, this might occur, and if you just narrowed it a teeny bit, this might occur, because I don't know if I'm sophisticated enough in this very detailed, nuanced plan to know those degrees of magnitude. And I think this is one of our most important votes every year.
Absolutely.
So if maybe we could get some outside counsel on that, and maybe that's what Deb's going to answer all my questions in 2 minutes. But I think that would be really important for lots of us to know to help make our decision.
See, I'm gonna say to you that no one can predict the future and what's gonna happen. No financial advisor is gonna come in. What you have in front of you is a 3-year history, and you have a 5-year history, and you have a knowledge base of knowing right now we're in a housing boom. It's the degree of what's on the plate coming out in the city of Attleboro. Every community is different. In the city of Attleboro right now, we're gonna be building residential homes quite a bit in the near future. We don't have a lot of commercial and industrial sitting on the books to come in. All right, it's just not there. So that tells you that to do anything, you want to narrow it down. I will also prefix this to you that I said a long time ago, I would never recommend going below 125.
Never.
Never.
Okay. See, that's something I didn't know, so it's good.
So can I ask why you'd never recommend going below 125? I'm just, you can
There's,
decline to answer, I just don't know.
no, I won't decline to answer it. There's crazy stuff that's been written into Mass General Law, and I call it crazy because once you pass a certain point, you all of a sudden disallow yourself to go back up. Same thing is true at 175. Our threshold right now, with the basis of how the city is made up, is around 125. I want to leave the option open for future assessors, future generations of directors and people in this city to say, if all of a sudden, for some reason, some commercial growth starts coming in, you can crank it back up. I would be an advocate to say, I want to see that levy grow, because you got to run a budget. You got to be able to run a business, and you want to run that business with the best ability you can, and that's why I say 125.
Before I get on Mark, this is one of the things where, as you mentioned, we had stayed pat, where there was some indication we should have continued to narrow the gap, which is something, a process we had started several years ago. So we kind of lost out at that time. I expect that the tax classification study board that was put together a few years ago, I expect them to chime in as they usually do, since that thing was formed, which was actually in part designed to address the point that Stan was just making, which is, in days gone by, sometimes when it came to the tax classification, the advice of financial people were ignored by this council, including in recent years when we did not continue the move in that direction, although we had financial people recommending that to us, because it starts to become very political and emotional, as the case may be. But part of the reason for that panel that was put together comprised, for those of you who weren't here, of both people who own businesses in the community, who own residents, some who had both, was to get us off of that, well, last year we gave a break to this group, so this year we'll give a break to that, which sometimes in the past has been a significant factor in the way that the rate was actually set. So the idea of what you were saying about moving around, that was exactly the idea, that we'd be able to adjust as necessary given the current conditions within the community itself.
The only thing, there's a difference in philosophies between that board
Yes.
and what I recommend to you. I recommend it to you in the best way possible to grow the ability to run and manage the city from a dollar and cents point of view. They give you a recommendation on trying to balance the burden on both commercial and residential. I'm not doing that. I'm saying to you, how can we maximize our, without hurting the residents and without, it might, in this case, it might give a little more benefit to the commercial that's out there. And yes, it would come back to the thing, hey, you give them a little benefit, maybe somewhere along the line they're gonna grow.
Right.
They're gonna grow, all right? Not a guarantee in this environment now. There is a guarantee in the commercial segment. Industrial segment, that's a lost soldier, all right, anywhere around here.
Okay, Councilor Cooper and then Councilor Blair.
Thank you. Stan, in years, what I notice is missing
And
from
then Councilor Hall.
this sheet, thank you for coming tonight, is in years past, you've not necessarily made suggestions, but have laid out what it would be, what the impact would be to the average and the median home if we went to, say, 1.4, 1.45, 1.5, and if we went the other way, so if you could prepare that, I think that would be helpful for us to see what the impact would be in those. So you're comparing apples to apples, right? You're looking at that same split at a say a 280 and a 240 house, the average and the median. You're looking at this split, same thing, 280, 240, and then you did it on the commercial side as well. You gave us that
Yep.
comparison
And
probably
see,
several years.
I avoided doing that tonight because I did not want to shape you into a direction. You can take these actual raw numbers that I gave you and make those multiplications. I very quickly tonight gave you a synopsis. If you remember the numbers I gave you before, I said, okay, just take that $10,000, multiply it by whatever tax rate, that's your increase. That's really all I was giving you on that spreadsheet. I was saying, here's what the number is going to be, multiply it by that. Because that's what it translates to. It goes back to what is the delta last year to this year, and it's $10,000.
Sure.
Okay, but I mean, when I come down for again, I'll be here again in the classification hearing, and you'll see that sheet. I will
Okay,
have it.
perfect.
I will have it at that time.
That's helpful.
I didn't want to sway you or give you that to try to make some kind of decision tonight. I wanted you to take all this raw data, see what's going on in the community.
Great.
And that's what you wanted. You wanted the ability to independently think on what you have in front of you with plenty of time.
Right, that was the whole purpose of doing this informational session tonight.
Yep.
Councilor Blair and then Councilor Hall.
I'm all.
You know that, Councilor Hall?
Okay.
Answered the question.
I'm
Okay.
going down the same direction as Councilor Cooper. And I know these are raw data. I mean, let's just say, and I do this with my condominium community in terms of trying to figure out what's the best mix of the homeowners association fee and so forth. So, I mean, if I wanted to, myself, you have this raw data. In other words, if you've got a certain amount of homes that are now valued at $450, in reality, I could go through every one of these numbers, put it in a spreadsheet, add on the different tax rates that I want to, and then I could assess how much additional income that would be based on that amount. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's correct.
So, I mean, I think
That's what
Councilor
Mark's-
Cooper, and so I will do that. if I can get the raw data from you, I can,
You got it. It's here.
yeah, but I need it in a form where I can go home on my computer and fool around with it.
Oh, you want electronically?
Yes,
Can you get that, John?
I can do that. I can do that.
okay, all right, then let's talk tomorrow, and I'll get you what, yeah, we'll see where it comes out. I think that's what, and I would like to see the same thing, because that'll give us some idea.
What's
I think
that?
I think that's coming, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do that at the presentation, but I mean, if you want to see something in advance,
Yeah, I'd like to see it beforehand.
It
just
is
to know
not
something.
hard data, though. That's the only thing.
That's fine.
You can stop in tomorrow. You stop in tomorrow,
Sure.
and I'll give you whatever you want.
Okay, no, that's great, because I just love to do stuff like that, and then it does give me a perspective, because to me, we're talking dollars. I mean, these translate into dollars, and I think that's what we're trying to see. I think you did a great job in expressing exactly, somebody's new to the city. The first thing I said when I came to the city is, you will never see industrial and very little commercial. This is not that kind of a city anymore. And again, I'm just seeing that as a new person coming in. So, I mean, it is the reality of where this city is at, and I think you did a great job of explaining that. It may not be what we want to hear, may not be what we want, but, I mean, the only place we're going to get income from is from the residential growth. I mean, that's
it.
just what it sounded like.
Right now,
so.
that's where it's going to come from. That's where you got a sizable growth coming down, and 80% of that growth is residential.
Okay.
All the new homes.
Yeah, for those of you who were not here at the beginning of the century, there was a lot of discussion in terms of like, are we a bedroom community? Are we becoming a bedroom community? Are we not? Are we, and the data very quickly showed around 2003, 2004, a little bit before that we were definitely becoming more of a bedroom community, which means, that the shift was obviously going to have to start to go in that area in order to maximize the growth that was happening here. So, yes, Councilor PORRECA.
Thank you. Did he yes, I was not here at the turn of the century.
Right. This century, not the last century.
Y'all picked up on that. We're like,
Right.
we're not on that.
I meant at the beginning of the 21st century, because that's when,
Turn of the century, you were right.
that was.
It's a turn of the century.
That was when it started to change, because before that, for those, Councilor Jackson was on in the late 90s, and at that time, there was, when we were having these discussions, there was still that, no, we're not a bedroom community, we're a little city, there's more there's more commercial or whatever. And at that time, we were looking at a number of roughly 70% or whatever, and now that number, it's the 70-30, it's down to what, now 82, so it's dropped even more than it
it's dropping
was.
every year.
So it's dropped like 12%, in that short amount of time, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mark, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I guess as I appreciate you coming down tonight and having this precursor conversation. I look forward to hearing what Deb has to say as well. But as we're going through this, two things. I agree with Vice President DENLEA that some outside help would be very helpful to us making the appropriate decisions. A business development director. I mean, there's never a better time to say that we need a business development director here in the city to kind of help drive up some of the commercial and industrial. Even if we're not a commercial industrial place anymore, it is growing in other places. So that's my little piece on that. And so I guess my question is, as we're moving forward, there's been a lot of talk about a 2.5 override. And as we're setting the tax rate this year, it's something that I want to be cognizant of as we're moving forward. And I don't necessarily know 100% how that works, so we'll have a conversation about that. But when we're making shifts and trying to figure out what we're going to charge for a new levy, we do want to drum up more money because things are more expensive in the city, not just on the school side, but on the city side. I just want to be cognizant of those kinds of things. And when we were talking, actually, when Councilor Hart was talking about, condo fees and how we're setting the rate for those, how we set the tax rate for that is a direct reflection on what your condo fees are. So when we're talking about raising taxes at the median at $150 more than what they're currently paying, it's not. I just want us to all just remember that that's $150 on top of X amount, which is then compounded by what they're doing. So saying that. I think it's impossible to say that we're not going to hurt the homeowner any way we look at it, because everyone's tax bills are going up. They go up every single year.
Every year.
And we have the potential of having them going up exponentially more within the next couple of years. So I just want to keep those kinds of things in mind. So I'll come and visit you. You know I'll come and visit you.
Yes.
It's actually Sam,
Councilor Vice President Denlea.
could you give us a 1 to 2 minute version on what happens to the tax rate if we do a 2.5 override? It increases.
Yeah, if it's a debt exclusion, it increases, the tax rate increases, and you put it at if you look at the levy limit sheet, it's in the packet. I put it in the packet. The only thing I didn't put in there, what was the growth number. It's at the very bottom, so your tax rate increases to make up that difference. That increases the levy capacity, so that's on top of 2.5. So you do, not only do you fund that project that you're doing, but you also increase your levy capacity for future years. And then
Forever?
No, until whatever that,
You're talking about two different
It
things.
was a
Excuse me.
This is a debt exclusion.
You asked
It's a
about
debt exclusion.
override. Stan answers, his answer is
Right.
about a debt exclusion. They're
Right,
two
a
different
one-time
things. I just want to make sure that's
Yeah.
clear to everybody.
overlay is
Sorry.
forever,
Right.
Thank you.
or until you
Exclusion
remove it.
Is for the set amount of time.
Correct.
Debt exclusion is for a set amount of time.
And for a
Right,
set project.
okay.
But could be refinanced over time.
That's what you're paying.
Typically, a refinancing is a reduction. Think about when you refinance your house. It's usually, I know some people pull out equity of their home and they refinance for the same principal. But in our environment, typically a refinancing of a municipal bond is to reduce your interest payments or restructure your principal payments, which is a reduction. And that reduction, if it's a debt exclusion, will be reflected on somebody's tax bill. An override becomes your new base. So right now, everybody knows it's your prior year levy, plus your 2.5% increase on that levy, add your growth to it, that becomes your new base for next year. That formula would be your levy from the previous year, your 16 levy limit, add your 2.5% to that, add your growth to that, add your override to that, that becomes your base for next year. So that's an override. A debt exclusion is slightly different. It's calculated slightly differently, and then you'd map it out, sort of like an amortization of what your debt is, and it would be declining over time. I've worked in Attleboro now for 20 years. We've had neither. So the actual specifics and particulars of that, I would have to, look at. But generally speaking, that's the difference between the two, that your exclusion theoretically goes off at the end of your debt, and override becomes part of your new base.
That's correct. Yeah, it does.
So exponentially increases.
Right.
I'm sorry?
What did you say?
Exponentially increases if you would.
With an
Because
override.
your 2.5%
Right, with an override.
is now
Exponentially.
Being more and
being
more.
compounded on a new
I just want to
base,
make
which
that
is
clear,
gone
exponentially
Right,
is
on
the word I'm
your-
using.
on your,
And it never goes away. Once you
Correct.
take it off, it never goes away.
Right.
it being an override.
Right, there is you could go for an underride, but that never happens. Very rarely
Right.
happens. You could put an underride to a vote.
Even the communities that are rich don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
right.
any other questions for Mr. Nazareth?
I do
Before
have
Deb
one
gets
thing.
on. Stan?
I wanted to say to Mark, if you look at the chart that I gave you, I kind of gave you a little indication where I would go. I bracketed in, and then I stopped doing it. Okay? Just to give the tidbit.
Once I got the glasses on.
You saw it.
Okay, well, thank you, Stan. Deb, what do you have for us?
Okay, so I actually just wanted to generally speak about the recap and the process of setting the tax rate as it relates to Stan's office and then my office. We work with the clerk's office. We work closely with the city collector's office as well as the MIS department to pull all of this information together and work cooperatively with the Department of Revenue. So the Department of Revenue happened to be here last week. My field rep was here, Stan's representative was here. So we had a brief meeting with a member of the Division of Local Services Bureau of Accounts and a member of the Division of Local Services Bureau of Local Assessments to sort of see where we were with the timetable and target dates for all sorts of things. So Stan's process that he's somewhat outlined for you today happens independent of what happens in my office and largely in advance of what happens in my office through the final process. So all of the assessment forms, the valuation forms, all of that kind of stuff is worked out through the assessor's office and approved from the Bureau of Local Assessments. We set target dates with 2 different divisions of the Department of Revenue, because all of Stan's stuff has to be approved, and then the package is assembled along with the votes and everything that are taken here in the city, and another package goes up to the Commonwealth, which includes Stan's information, as well as what's called the tax recap, which is 4 pages, and I'm gonna hand you out last year's copy. And then what happens is that information, along with all the supplemental information, is reviewed by the Department of Revenue's Bureau of Local Services representative, which is sort of my side, my contact up there, the person that does the oversight of the information I forward to them. And ultimately what happens is a tax rate is approved from the Director of Accounts, is returned to the City of Attleboro, and then the Assessor's Office works with the MIS department and the Collector's Office to upload the file of values and all that kind of stuff, and transfers that to the Collector's Office. Once it's in the Collector's Office, a multitude of things happen relative to liens and betterments and all of that type of process in order to create the tax bill. The process of creating the tax bills are done internally here in the City of Attleboro. The file is created, Munis, everything is uploaded into Munis between Vision and Munis, all sorts of things happen in that process. And ultimately what happens is the actual tax bill is created, the file is created, it connects with the general ledger and all that stuff, and the bills are printed, they're stuffed, and they're mailed. So we have to, the goal is obviously to have the tax bills leave the building on time, because that has a great impact on cash flow in the City of Attleboro. If you don't meet the deadline of getting the bills out by December 31st, there are, I don't want to use the word penalties, but from the perspective of the city, people's bills aren't due the same date, there's not interest that accrues if they fail to pay on time and all of that kind of stuff. So there is an impact to the City of Attleboro, particularly in the management of cash, along with other things that happens if the tax bills don't get out the door. So everybody's heard the critical date of December 31st. We work backwards from the December 31st deadline in order to know where we need to be from things. We've met with the collector and the director of MIS to find out where they are with the process. And this memo that I'm going to hand out to folks gives you sort of the outline of the target dates. It's double-sided on one. And what would happen if the vote of the municipal council for the classification happens on November 15th, these are the dates. If the vote were to happen on November 22nd, these are the dates. Because in order to get the bills to the post office, which happens here in Attleboro, and the deadline for the collector to the Attleboro post office is December 28th. I know sometimes people have said, well, why don't we drop them off at Providence because they're open later and stuff. The city's meter and permitting is through the Attleboro post office. So this is worked out with them in advance. Not an unreasonable question for people to ask. I mean, if we're at crunch time, God knows what would happen. But the goal would be for us to actually have back from the Department of Revenue the approved tax rate
Bless you.
no later than December 9th, which is a Friday. In order to give DOR, the Bureau of Local Services side, some time to go through the process, the review process and stuff, we're thinking that if we had it there December 1st, that would work. You know what I mean? So the dates are kind of working backwards from there, like arrival at DOR November 30th to give them 7 business days to look at the package. We never know when our package arrives to the Department of Revenue if there's 1 package in the pile or 15 packages in the pile. We have no idea how many are going to potentially be in the queue. The other piece of that that's important is that I feel compelled to mention is on October 20th and 21st, so the latter part of this week. This week, we're doing a Munis upgrade here in the city. The computer system will be down on Friday for that upgrade. Bless you. Bless you. When that happens, and we never know until we actually start the tax bill process how things are going to go, and this is going to be the first year in the new version of Munis. So, you know, those kinds of things make me very nervous, other people less so. We're working on now in my office, and the city clerk's office is assembling page 4 of the recap. So page 4 of the recap represents all of the appropriations that come in. So those are the types of things that happen. We're working on collating and consolidating, reporting all of the data that's needed in order to fill out all of the forms for the Department of Revenue for their review. So last year's package was a total of 61 pages. Some of those pages are stands that get approved through his process with new growth. And then subsequent forms get approved, and like the LA form, the LA5 form is the form that a majority of the municipal council would sign after you vote the classification, and that gets signed off on, and we submit that along with the package. So this memo, and I'm trying to keep my comments brief, this memo outlines your dates, okay? So I'm gonna hand that out to the council. And then I think I have enough copies for everybody. If I don't, I'm certainly going to forward an electronic copy to Ken. I know that's the rule.
Okay, yep.
So there's that. And then if you have any interest and you want to just have a discussion about what goes into the tax rate, this is a copy of last year's 4 pages of the tax recap. This is what would commonly be referred to as the recap from the Department of Revenue. So if you're going to have to share.
That's right.
Okay?
Yep.
In addition to this, there are a number of supplemental forms. So, and some of those forms, this will be the last year that those will be submitted. As many of you know, the Municipal Modernization Act was signed by Governor Baker on August 9th. A lot of those changes that are going to happen with that legislation go into effect November 7th. Oh, is that my memo on that?
Yes.
Okay, excuse me, November 7th. And it's fair, I think, to say that municipal finance officials, myself included, are sort of working through the process with the Department of Revenue, trying to figure out what it is that we're going to need to change or what we're not going to change. So the advice that we've been given from the Department of Revenue right now is do the recap the same way you would do it in the past, and we're kind of going to figure out what may or may not need to happen. So for example, the OL1 is a form that Stan and I fill out every year. It's not part of the 4 pages I gave you, but it's a representation of the levy, the overlay, which everybody's familiar with the overlay. Effective November 7th, the overlay is going to be condensed into one number. So we've historically reported by levy year. It's now going to be in the aggregate. DOR still saying, still fill out the OL form like you filled out every year. Next year, the forms will be different because a lot of these forms are computerized on Gateway, and there's no way that those are going to be updated prior to November 7th. And if you filled out and submitted your tax recapitulation before November 7th, you'd need to fill it out in the individual levy year. So that's the advice we're being given. There will be other substantive changes to our processes here in the city and what we need to do. We're working on those. I met with Councilor DeLisio briefly last week, and we touched base on that. There will be some things coming forward. I met with the city solicitor earlier today, and we're talking about like how to best get that information out to folks. But for this year, we're going to submit the tax recapitulation in the same methodology and format that we have used in prior years. That's what our field rep has said that we're to do. The page 4 of the recap, which is the 4th page of the document, second from the last that I handed out, this is what the city clerk's office is presently compiling in draft. So Steve has been working on this, and my office will review this, and we'll work on this in the computer's format together, and we'll see that this makes it into the system. This is a representation of all the appropriations that the council makes. So the last vote from last year that was included in the recap is November 10th, 2015. Votes after that were for appropriations will be included on the recap that we're going to give you this year, well, finalized this year. The importance of that I need to make sure I mention today, to me it's important that all of the votes of the councils that are appropriation related of new money, not transfers, but new money, have to happen before the tax rate can be set. So if there's a matter before you that is an appropriation, including supplemental appropriations, that has to appear on here before the tax rate is set. Otherwise, what happens is we missed the capture of that calculation for the revenue. You know, we'd have the revenue coming in, but we wouldn't have the expense. That's important. So I just wanted to make sure to point that out. So if our target dates of the classification vote and the shift are the 15th or the 22nd, that, you know, keep that in mind as you deliberate. That would just be something that we need to make sure that we do, okay? The other pages on here, the other page, the local receipt page, summary of the major revenue of local receipts, because in the simplest basic, there's only 4 major revenue sources for the city, right? So you have your property taxes, which is the levy, that's your front page, right? This is your tax page, which shows you, it's hard to read. Here's your $14.82, here's your $21.42, those are from the forms that Stan showed you over here, right? It's the same thing. As Stan was talking, I took out my copy of the recap and I like ticked and tied some of his numbers. I'm like, okay, that's where that comes from. Like his form that he showed you, this one here, with your residential values and stuff, the $3.2 million, and that's, you know, $3 billion, $3,282,673,000. I was looking at those. Those are from the LA5, which is his form that he gave you here. These are the forms that Stan's office fills out that become part of our package. They get approved by his division of local services, and they get signed off on the Board of Assessors, and that works their way into it. When you look at this page, your front page of the tax recap, you can see that your LA, it says right on it that it's from the LA5, and these are the percentage of the total values, right, of the city, and that it works its way across. So that's where a lot of this numbers fall in. We can't generate this page until his numbers are finished because the values don't drop in. So essentially, we can drop in scenarios and stuff, but until all of the votes are done and everything else is finalized, a lot of the information is sort of in flux, and we're working on it in draft, but it's not final until, you know, very close to the time that you're going to vote the tax classification and the shift. Places that have movement are, you know, when you did the budget in June, the budget in June were based on, obviously, the appropriation and the forecasted revenue numbers. So the administration reviews and looks at where are we relative to the forecasted numbers that were there in June, and if something has to change, sometimes they'll change in the local receipts. There'll be shifts in the local receipts based on what is actually happening. That's not uncommon, that happens annually. The other thing that I'll go back and relook at the cherry sheet, but maybe you recall in a couple of years, the last few years, there's been minor changes to the cherry sheet, which has caused an adjustment to, you know, grouping for the state aid numbers and stuff like that. Sometimes, depending on what it is, that requires action of the municipal council. Free cash hasn't been certified yet, so that should be coming in the next couple of days. When that happens, additional appropriations could happen out of free cash. Those, if those matters are voted, they would be recorded onto the tax recap. But those are not the votes that would stop the process. It would be a supplemental appropriation that would have to be addressed ahead of time. I think the critical path is just to make sure that if we can get the votes done and have the tax recap finalized and up to DOR in enough time to make sure that we have the rate back by December 9th, that would be great. Remember though, December 9th for us means we have to provide the Department of Revenue a reasonable amount of time to review the package. And I never know if we're first in line or 15th in line. This is a recertification year. So the work plan with the Department of Revenue that we went over last week was for, and it says it in your memo, that the city will be at preliminary approval for values by October 28th, then you have 5 days of disclosure for that subsequent period. And then the goal would be that the Department of Revenue, on or before November 10th, which is a Thursday, right before the Veterans Day holiday, approve the growth. And that way there, the growth would be approved and everything would be done, hopefully, in time. I would like to just make note to all of you that this last year, the actual tax rate came back from the Department of Revenue approved on November 20th. This was actually approved by the Department of Revenue last year on November 20th. So,
November 20th, and all my submittal was approved and done October 6th.
yeah.
So that gives you an idea of what could happen if it goes very long. I mean, October 6th, there was no certification. I sent up data, same as you're looking at right now. That data was there. That's quite a big lag in between. So the closer you get towards the December timeframe, there's a lot more people crunching inside of there. So that's what the point Deb's making is, even right now, I cannot, I did this for you, but I can't load in the form where she needs to have this data. I'm not allowed to put in any of the LA4, and it's frozen. It's frozen for that. When I did this, I backed it through my sub-program, but it won't go into the recap. All right, so it's a tight window this year because it's certification year, and this is the last year that's going to be a certification year, and for now certification will go out 5 years. All right, so that'll be the next certification.
I did want to add that just in terms of working with both Stan and Deb, and with an eye towards the other things that have to be done, the administration will be sending down the request for us to actually begin this process, which that has not occurred yet. I anticipate that's going to happen from discussions I've had with the mayor, will be occurring tomorrow. We have to have a public hearing on the tax rate, and we have to advertise for 2 weeks. So what we're looking at this point in time is having the public hearing on Tuesday, the 15th of November. Because if it comes on tomorrow, we don't have enough time to advertise before the next regular meeting, number one. Cannot call for a special meeting on the 8th because that's election day. State law prohibits us from having public hearings on an election day. So that's why we're looking at the 15th tentatively. Just as a reminder, there are 2 votes that need to be taken relative to the tax rate. One, whether we're going to continue with a dual rate or not. That's the first vote that has to be taken. Then the second is the actual rate itself. So once we actually have gotten the request down from the administration to begin the process, that'll be assigned to committee, and then Stan may very well come back to talk to the committee at some point if necessary, just for clarification, or at a committee meeting. We'll be able to share information and so forth at that time. The public hearing will be open to the to the public. Obviously, as they always are. Some of the information that Stan presented tonight is sometimes information that he presents at the public hearing. But again, as was mentioned, he doesn't have some of the final, facts and figures here. But in terms of the general process of what's involved, and you can see some of the data we got tonight is similar to what he does present. So, again, part of the reason in talking with both Stan and Deb of wanting to have this meeting on this evening before we get the actual request was to get you all thinking about looking at some of the facts, figures, a little bit about how the process actually works, so that especially so we'll be able to make these particular deadlines. And as you saw in the memo, there's a couple of different scenarios that are in here. So again, the other dates, the firm dates at the moment are really at this point looking at the public hearing on the 15th. That's the one firm date we have. In order for us to vote on some of these other matters would require either a special meeting or, whatever the case may be. So that's just something, that'll be forthcoming. So there's just kind of a lot of this is still kind of a moving target to a certain extent. Yes, Councilor Howell.
I just have a question. This may be outside what you're doing, but I just want to ask it based on the class. If we do want to put one of those, there on the tax forms apparently, or when you put out the bills, you can put some check boxes on there to see if people want to do additional donations to particular places.
Based on the Home Act?
Yes. So that's something that, because of the new Modernization Act, you can actually put these things like, do you want to give a donation to, and I can't remember what, there was a certain number of them. So if you got a bill and you decided you wanted to give an extra money to, I don't know, say the school, whatever, there'd be a check box on there. Is that going to affect this at all? Is that just income? That's just donations?
Honestly, I don't think that there's time to figure out if those forms can even be done. I thought that was the Home Act, which is outside, and I could be wrong, because I've only gone to one session on that. I'm going to another session
Yeah.
on November 3rd. But I think the Home Act is outside of the municipal modernization, and I thought that was.
Do you know what I'm speaking of?
Yeah, are they inside or outside?
They're
Is-
outside.
It's outside the modernization, it's the home, so the subsequent question would be, some of those acts were for fiscal 2018.
That's correct.
Is the
Yeah.
Home Act for
That-
18?
Yeah, it's to give you time to put this in place. You can't do that now.
Right, right.
Wouldn't have
That's
time.
what you're asking. You wouldn't have time to do. It's a form generation. All those forms have to be approved by the state and all the,
Okay, so it's something for us to look at after this gets done, because there is, it's kind of neat. I think it's kind of neat that if you want, and we've talked about this before, about people trying to give money if they want to give money, and this is ways for citizens of the city of Attleboro
so you were
to.
paying attention while I was eating my
I
pudding.
did pay attention to the classes, yes. So I thought that was a pretty neat thing to be able to do, and you can do it voluntarily, which is an even more wonderful thing to do, so. Thanks.
Are there any other questions for either Deb or Stan on this, at this point?
Could I, Frank,
Okay,
ask
yes.
a favor? I'm
I was
gonna,
going to ask both of you if you had anything else to add, so.
what's that?
I was going to ask both of you if you had anything else to
Okay.
add, so.
I
Go
was
for
just
it.
curious, I'm gonna be coming down for the finance committee, right? That'll be before the 15th. In order to,
I can't speak for what the chair's exactly going
Whatever
to
the
do,
chair might
but
do,
she's
but it
aware, she's
usually
aware
it'll
that you would, once as a committee.
it'll be
you
before
will
the
come down.
public hearing, but
Yeah.
I would ask if you all could have one question for me of what you're thinking about the tax rate and what you saw tonight and your take on how you would do it, just so I can formulate, you know what I'm asking? You flip the ties to the other side to me, what you're thinking about these numbers, what you see in the numbers that I gave you. So that I just,
Yeah, what I'm going to suggest along that line is, in response to that, as we generally said that you're not getting a lot of different ones, send them to Ken, and then Ken will send them, he'll copy all of us, and he'll send them directly. That way it'll be one document, we'll all see what we're thinking at the same time.
yeah, and then at the same time, if I see something, I can then answer those questions directly and have a list, have something prepared directly for that question, all right, if you don't mind.
Okay. Anything else to add, Deb?
So I just wanted to say that, so between now and, November 15th, which is, I believe the date you said that it's
Right.
likely that the public hearing will
Right.
happen, we'll continue to, we being myself, the city clerk, we and the assessor's office, we continue to work on these forms. So while things are a moving target and are not finalized until obviously the shift is voted and that kind of stuff, we know more and more information the later the date gets, I don't expect growth to be finalized until the the November 10th deadline is what they said, and that's because of disclosure.
That's correct.
This is a unique year in that we're in the recertification process. So it takes a little bit longer this fiscal year than in other years. But I'm available to answer questions if I can, I certainly will. I don't have as great an understanding of the values and that kind of stuff, so I can ask and meet with you, with Stan, if that's something somebody else needs me to do.
Okay, good. Okay, well, again, I want to thank you for coming down and presenting this information, all of you who came out tonight, and again, it's always an interesting time of year as we work through this. So that's all that was the purpose for this meeting for this evening, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, the motion's in order, all those in favor? Aye, opposed, motion passes, we're adjourned at
I think I better, I don't get to say,
8:30.
aye, yes, we get to go home. All right, so, this one's your copy.
How you doing, Mike?
Hello, cheerio. Oh, no, last week. I know. And today's